So, nice to see you all again. It's only been a week since my first video was out, and already things have gotten wild. I got a sponsorship offer within the first 24 hours of my last video being out. Can you believe that? A sponsorship offer already? I can't really get into it too much right now because I'm still waiting for a few T's to be crossed and I's to be dotted, but by the time I'm ready with my next video, I'll have a lot more to say about it, and I'm still reeling from this. My mind is blown that I had a sponsorship already. Did that ever happen with any other YouTuber? I can't remember what that's happening before. Doesn't mean it hasn't, it's just, what? But enough about me. We are here to talk about my Sims, as I said last time. So, today we're going to be going down the bayou, and looking at the residence I've made of Willow Creek.
Let's start with the patriarch and matriarch, Jebediah and Beth Ann, shall we? Jebediah spent his life out in nature, tending his plants, and wouldn't want it any other way. He can come off as a bit gruff and abrasive if you don't know him well, but underneath that exterior, he's a big marshmallow. He loves his family to the moon and back and will protect them with everything he has. Since he and Beth Ann have gotten a little long in the tooth, they've moved to a small house in Evergreen Harbor to live out their twilight years in tranquility. He left the farm to their son Walter, but visits almost every day to say hi and help with the farming. Beth Ann here is the quintessential rural housewife. Polite, good-mannered, loves to cook and keep things tidy, and would move mountains for her son and grandkids. The problem is, she's a bit bullheaded and stubborn. Once she's set her mind to something, or is convinced that she's right, there is no talking to her. This has led to some intense friction between Beth Ann and Walter's wife, Camilla. Those two do not get along in the slightest. Even bringing up Camilla's name to Beth Ann will get your head ripped off. She's never thought she was good enough for her little Walter, and only tolerates her presence briefly for Andrew and Randy's sakes. Things can get a little hardcore between them. It's pretty funny. On to the current owner of Horvath Farm, Walter. He's a dedicated, nature-loving gardener trying to support his wife and kids. You'll never see him happier than when he's either playing with his youngest son Randy or out tending his plants in the backyard. During the day, he works as a manual laborer, growing crops that'll eventually fill the shelves at the local grocery store. So, essentially, Walter spends his entire day doing back-breaking labor in the fields, then heads home and does the same thing at his own house. Dude loves farming. Jebediah raised him with love of nature, and boy does he love it. Walter's a bit of a paranoid conspiracy theorist, too. His older son Andrew tends to accidentally leave his laptop open when he's leaving for school, and Walter has discovered the world of fake news. He's by no means like a sim equivalent to a QAnon supporter or anything, but if you bring up llamas around him, he'll rant at you for hours about how the burgers at the Blue Velvet are actually made of llama meat. But, unbeknownst to almost everyone, mainly because there's no aspiration for it, thanks EA, Walter has a secret dream. Ever since he was a little boy, he's wanted to go to space. It's all he's ever wanted. He's just never thought he was smart enough to do it. So, the whole time he's tending these crops, while he does enjoy it, in the mind this whole time he's like,
Space, I'm gonna go to space, yes, please, space, go to space.
will he ever live that dream? That's up to you. Now let's meet Mrs. Horvath, Camilla. She's a vegetarian, like me. She's mostly unassuming, just keeps the house clean and takes care of the boys. In my playthrough, Camilla decided she was tired of the housewife lifestyle and got a job as a cook for a curating service. It's exhausting work, and it means good to see her family a little less, but it's worth it for her to feel more independent and make some simoleons of her own in the process, since Walter doesn't exactly bring in massive amounts of dough. Selling the occasional knitting project on Plopsy doesn't exactly hurt either. Not that she'd ever complain about any of it. Camilla is pure angel through and through. She loves flowers and grows a little garden out by the back porch, which Walter mostly takes care of, to Camilla's chagrin. Though she's a very kind, good sim, if you get on her bad side, watch out. She can have quite a temper on her when she wants to. As I said before, the fights she and Beth Ann have gotten into are legendary. This is the oldest of Walter and Camilla's 2 sons, Andrew. He's a bit of a jock, though he didn't make it on any of his school sports teams. He and Walter watch sports together almost every night, even though Walter isn't really that into them. He might look like a bit of a lughead at first glance, but Andrew is actually really highly intelligent. He's in the top percentile of his class, and it wouldn't surprise anyone if he ended up graduating from high school with honors. His love of sports might lead some to think he wants to be an athlete when he grows up, but he doesn't. You see, Andrew is the only one who knows Walter's secret astronaut dream. He used to read him stories about space constantly as a toddler, and sci-fi is always Walter's choice on family movie nights. So, like his father, Andrew longs to be an astronaut. But unlike his father, his dream isn't secret. He knows exactly what steps to take to make that dream possible and has already started building his skills up to get there. In my playthrough, Andrew has accomplished that dream and is one of the highest ranked astronauts in town. He's got a girlfriend who he loves very much, Bonnie Graves. Their teenage passion is infectious, and it's no surprise that everyone at school wants to vote them prom king and queen. If we had proms, that is. You'll meet Bonnie and her family later, but first, let's finish this section by talking about Randy and the dogs. This is Randy, the youngest Horvath. He's a goofy little turd who never really takes anything seriously. He's constantly cracking jokes and doing everything he can to make other people laugh. He probably has undiagnosed ADD, to be honest. His biggest dream is to grow up to be a stand-up comedian someday, which he has done in my playthrough. Given how disruptive and borderline obnoxious he can be, you'd think Randy would have absolutely terrible grades, right? Nope! While teachers may not be able to get him to focus, Andrew can somehow. With Andrew's top-notch tutoring, Randy's grades are actually pretty decent. He has a little bit of a schoolyard crush on Andrew's girlfriend's Bonnie's little sister, but she doesn't really give him the time of day. Poor little dude. Don't worry, Randy. You'll find someone someday. Last but not least are the Horvath Pets, Princess and Dusty. Dusty is Walter's extremely loyal blue-tick coonhound, who is always by his side when he's working out in the garden. He's a smart boy who always protects the family when he's needed. Whenever pests rear their ugly heads to threaten the crops, Dusty is there to save the day. You couldn't ask for a better farm dog. Princess is Camilla's bloodhound. She was actually purchased by Jebediah as a puppy to be a hunting dog, but she proved far too cowardly for that life, so he gave her to Camilla at Winterfest later that year, much to Beth Ann's displeasure. Princess is a good girl, and Camilla adores her, but boy howdy is she lazy. If a burglar were to come in, if EA ever actually decided to add burglars to the game, Princess would probably just keep sleeping on the couch and let them take whatever. Walter is hoping to make a little money by breeding Dusty and Princess, but Camilla won't hear of it. She doesn't want her little angel risking her life for the sake of some extra simoleons. Can't say I blame her. Dog pregnancy can be a little dangerous. That's all for the Horvath family. Let's wander across the street to meet the next family. The McGraskys are Camilla Horvath's family, her mother, father, and twin sister. Let's start out with Dad, Ted. Ted McGraskey is a simple man. Doesn't really say much, tends to keep to himself when he's not with his family. A lot of the townsfolk thinks he's some senile old creeper who loiters around local fishing holes, but the truth is, Ted McGraskey is one of the best fishermen of his generation. His amazing skill with the fishing pole actually got him some attention from TV networks wanting to sign him up for his own show, but he turned them down. Ted doesn't want that noise in his life. He just wants to spend his golden years with his family, minding his own business. Some of you might think he's an idiot for not taking the deal, but honestly, not everyone wants to be on TV, Christine McGraskey is a housewife through and through. If she isn't cleaning, she's cooking. And if she's not cooking, she's taking care of the grandkids. She's content to live that life, but it isn't without friction. You see, Christine is asexual. She loves Ted, don't get me wrong, she just doesn't like to woohoo. She still does it sometimes, for Ted's sake, but it's not something she's particularly enthusiastic about. This can lead to a few disagreements between the two, but by this point in their lives, Ted's too old to argue about the issue very long. Besides, the only part that really matters to him is that Christine loves him. Which she does. Christine would do anything for her family. She adores them all and happily volunteers to babysit Andrew and Randy regularly. True, she isn't the deepest sim, but Christine is still a sweet lady who I admire a lot. Finally, we have Cindy, Camilla's twin sister. Cindy is almost the complete opposite of her sister in many ways. Camilla is a vegetarian. Cindy wouldn't be caught dead eating a salad. Camilla is family-driven and focused. Cindy is a hopeless romantic with no idea what to do with her adult life. She knows she should have moved out of the house by now, but who wants to pay the bills when mom and dad are right there to pay them instead? For the moment, she's happy to laze around the house watching rom-coms on TV all day, daydreaming about maybe being an actress with multiple love affairs. Funny enough, her love life went in a very interesting direction in my playthrough. Cindy ended up with 2 boyfriends, and one of them autonomously proposed to her. But little did I, and she was pregnant with the other boyfriend's baby. To top it all off, she suddenly had a whim to both marry one boyfriend and get engaged to the other. I ended up having to flip a coin to decide, and the baby daddy was the winner. Guess that's what they call champagne problems. The McGraskys may not have the most in-depth storyline out of all the Sims I've made, but I still enjoy their antics, especially Cindy's. Poor girl's had a hot mess of a love life for a while there. Now let's venture next door to meet the next family. I think the Graves family is one of my favorites. Their story is complicated and messy. I just love it. I've been waiting for this one. Let's start with Tex over here. Tex Graves is the biggest from Willow Creek, and yet somehow continues to be mayor, even though he hasn't implemented any helpful policies since the 80s. Couldn't be that he takes gigantic campaign donations from illegal sources. No way! And the fact that he's the son of a wealthy oil tycoon couldn't have anything to do with it either. He's a big jerk who doesn't really care about anyone but himself. In fact, there's a rumor that he drowned his campaign manager in the 70s in his swimming pool, but that's just crazy talk, right? Right. Moving on. This is Mrs. Graves, Donna. She's a much stronger woman than I am, because she's put up with Texas for decades. The lies, the cheating, the potential murder, the fraud, all of it. But in her defense, she doesn't know about everything. She thinks the campaign manager really did accidentally drown in the pool. Luckily for Tex, and for their son Richard when he was a kid, Donna has always possessed mysterious gifts that make it easier for her to commune with the dead. What she doesn't know is that she's secretly a spellcaster who's never truly explored the extent of her power. If she put her mind to it, she could probably become one of the strongest spellcasters in the realm of magic. Will she, though? That's for you to decide. She hasn't done that in my playthrough, but you're welcome to take their story anywhere you want. Now we move to Donna and Tex's only son, Richard. It's no coincidence that I named him Richard, a name that has a swear for a nickname, because he's the second biggest in Willow Creek. Foul-tempered, rude, prone to fits of anger, guzzles juice like it's water, verbally abusive. Richard is just the sweetest guy, isn't he? He demands absolute perfection in every aspect of his life. He doesn't care if his family is actually happy, as long as the neighbors think they're happy. And in this toxic environment, it isn't surprising that secrets grow. Lila Graves comes off to most of her neighbors as this quiet, sad lady who lives nearby. After almost 2 decades of suffering as Richard's wife, Lila had given up hope that she would ever be happy in a relationship. But then, she met Richard's campaign intern, Ronnie Harmonson. Loud, boisterous, and unabashedly out as a lesbian, she rocked Lila's world. The two of them would talk for hours about their rough home lives and their dreams for the future. A beautiful love was born. Now Lila is happier than she's ever been, but at the cost of living a lie. Can she keep that lie up? That's your choice. Personally, in my playthrough, Richard caught Lila and Ronnie, divorced her, and now Lila and Ronnie are happily married, living their best lives in a small apartment far away from the drama. Exactly what they deserve. Here's the oldest of the Grace children, Bonnie. Honestly, Bonnie is one of my favorite Sims that I ever made. I think she's just super cute, and sweet and doesn't deserve any of the crappy home life I give her. Anyway, Bonnie hates her father, as she should. She avoids him as much as possible and just tries to be the perfect daughter he expects so he'll leave her the alone. Her grades are perfect, she's popular at school, and has a very sweet boyfriend who she can't get enough of. If there wasn't so much drama and tension in the house, Bonnie would probably be super happy. Luckily for her and my playthrough, she eventually married Andrew, had a son named Thomas, and got a job as a florist. Growing up admiring Camilla Horvath's flower garden inspired her, not that our nature girl really needed much of a push. Oh, and she also decided she wanted to be a spellcaster one day, so now she's a garden witch.
Bonnie was actually involved in one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me in Sims 4. So let me give you a little setup. I wish I had evidence for this. Bonnie and Andrew had just gotten married. She was pregnant with their first child. She was in, I think, the second trimester. Andrew was off at his college course trying to become an astronaut, and one of Bonnie's friends invited her to the Humor and Hijinks Festival. And I thought, why not? She has a day off. She could use a little fun till Andrew gets home. So I sent her there. She's having a great time, an amazing time, a wonderful time. And then she died of laughter. I was horrified. I was like, oh God, Bonnie! I was freaking out. I immediately had Andrew cut out of his college class and come down to plead with the Grim Reaper to save her. It actually worked, which is a rare thing for me. The Grim Reaper must hate me because he never does that usually. So he brings Bonnie back to life only for her to immediately die of laughter again. It was at that point that I was all, no. And brought her back to life and exited and, without saving. I lost about a Sims week worth of progress, but I didn't care. At that point I had had enough. It was just ridiculous. Anyway, back to the Graves family.
This is Taylor, the youngest Graves. Did I name her Taylor just because I'm an enormous Swiftie?
Maybe.
Anyway, Taylor Graves is a rambunctious little scamp. There isn't a tree in the neighborhood she hasn't climbed, or boy at school she hasn't tried to beat up. She's a little rough around the edges, but otherwise, she's a good girl. She loves her mom and sister and wants nothing more than all the constant fighting to stop. In my playthrough, Taylor grew up to have a lot in common with her mother. She married her childhood best friend Andrea, whose family I forgot to upload to the gallery before they aged up too much. I'm sorry. And moved to an apartment not too far from where Lila and Ronnie live in Evergreen Harbor. Let's go, lesbians! How could I forget the fuzziest member of the Graves family, Rex? He's the goodest boy. Unlike everyone else in the house, he actually likes Richard. He loves to curl up by Richard's desk while he's, quote-unquote, writing legislation and take a nap. But just because he likes Richard doesn't mean he doesn't like the girls. Rex loves his entire family. He can get into a little bit of trouble in the neighborhood with the other dogs, but never anything serious. Like I said, a good boy through and through. Now let's move across town and discuss the final family of today's video. The Langfords, like the Graves family, are miserable. Honestly, maybe even a little bit more miserable. This is Peter Langford, respected detective and all-around jerk. You know those kind of cops that harass people for doing absolutely nothing wrong and flip out at even the slightest hint of disrespect? Yeah, that's Peter. He's just an ugly, ugly man on the inside. Which is a shame because he's got a decent-ish face. Watch out, everybody! We've got a Karen over here! No lie, her actual name is Karen. I'd wanted to build a Karen for a long time, and when the opportunity and inspiration came to make one, I had a blast. Domineering, cruel, vicious, and all around nasty, Karen is one of the meanest Sims in Willow Creek. Nobody really likes her. Her own family can't even stand her. The only people that can tolerate her are her Plopsy customers, and that's only because they don't have to deal with her in person. Like Peter, Karen is a lot of fun to hate. She's been long dead in my playthrough though. She died of anger after getting into an argument with Bonnie Graves while she was over to visit. And now we go to the last sim we'll talk about today, Tiffany. Tiffany is the most popular girl at her school, only rivaled by her best friend Bonnie. You'd think that would bother her, but honestly, it doesn't. She and Bonnie have been inseparable since toddlerhood, and you can't tell that apart with some high school level drama. She's a shoo-in to be valedictorian at graduation someday, and would be head cheerleader if it were possible to have high school cheerleaders in Sims 4. But underneath that veneer of perfection beats the heart of a little rebel. Tiffany has been dating local troublemaker Eli Augustin, who you'll meet later, for weeks, and needless to say, Peter and Karen are none too happy about it. In fact, in my playthrough, Eli and Peter got into 3 straight fights in a row one time. It was unbelievable. I thought they were going to fight for the rest of their lives. Luckily, they didn't. Anyway, in my save, Tiffany grew up to marry Eli and become a well-respected style influencer. Her fashion choices may not always make the most sense to everybody, but she goes for it with everything she's got. I think that's worth some respect.
Well, that's about all the time we have. I can't believe I have to say this, but Willow Creek's going to be a 2-parter. So next week I will finish going through the residences of Willow Creek, and then we will move on to Oasis Springs. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a thumbs up and subscribe. That kind of stuff is golden to us YouTubers. And tell me in the comments below, what are your crazy Sims stories? It doesn't have to be Sims 4. It can be 1, 2, or 3 even. I love hearing Sims stories. It's fun stuff. And I love that I can share my Sims with other people. If you told me when I was a kid that I would be able to make out their households and that people would see them, I love it. So if you ever want to download any of these guys, they're up on the gallery under my EA ID, DoveCalderwood, like I said before. I hope you guys have an awesome week. I'll see you next Friday. Stay goofy.